Now we can log into this machine with some user remotely. So this is my client terminal, and I've opened up a secure shell to this machine, and I can do stuff on there. But I don't want to have it possible to log in with a password. I want to make use of some private and public keys to do this. Now I have some scripts, just as a reminder of how this stuff works. In this Linux scripts repo, there's this Linux folder. There's this Linux directory. It's kind of a general sort of command. Let's take a look at creating a user. Yeah, that's fine. So we can set up a user with this. I'm actually going to get rid of that. And then also create an SSH key. And here are some of the configurations that we can set up on our SSH service so that it doesn't accept passwords. All right, let's run through this. I'm going to put this somewhere else. So on my server, I can actually do something like sudo systemctl stop sshd just to prevent any connections from being made. Let's test that this is fine. So I'm going to log out there and then try to connect to it again, and then it tells me that connection has been refused. Okay, that means that it worked. Let's go to my home directory for this user because I want to generate some keys for this guy. So I'm currently in the home directory for this user, and I want to create a key pair that I can use to log into this server instead of a password. So I'm going to do this on the server, but you can pretty much do this wherever. The first thing we want to do is create a key. So SSH keygen, and then -b, that allows us to specify how large this key should be. So I'm going to go with 2048, and then the T flag, that's to specify the type. So I'll go with RSA. If I hit enter, it's going to ask me where should it save this file. I'll just save it in my home directory. So Fedora key, enter a passphrase for this key. Now this is kind of like a password to be able to unlock this key. It's a security thing. So I'll just put in something stupid, but still pretty useful. So if your key gets compromised, then there's still a password required to open it. And there we go. It's generated me some keys, and there's also this random art thing. So if I do ls in here, you'll see there's this Fedora key and Fedora key.pub. This is the public key and this is the private key. We can actually take a look at them. So that's the OpenSSH private key. All right. And then if we do the public one, it's going to give me this. Now, pretty important distinction here. The private key goes to the client. The public key stays on the server. So let's first take care of this public key. This thing here is related to the private key, so it knows it can use this public key to authorize any communication that's been encrypted by this private key. We still need to do something with this. So in my home directory, I'm going to make a directory, and it's going to be called .ssh. This is a hidden directory, and this is where SSH is going to look for some configuration and for keys. Then I'm going to go into that directory. And now I need a file. This file will be consulted whenever someone tries to connect through SSH with a private key. And the content of this file needs to be all of these public keys that are associated with the private keys that are in use. So if I had 5 private keys floating around and people are using them, I need 5 public keys inside this directory, inside a specific file. Now this is a file, so at this point I only have 1 key, so I'm going to copy this, and then I'll say echo, put this in quotation marks, I'll paste it, and then make use of this sort of, put this into a file. And the name of this file is going to be authorized keys. You see that I spelled that right? Yeah, that's fine. So now if I do cat on this authorized keys, I'll see the content in there. So if I make another key pair from maybe some other user or another machine, I'll need to append it here. So it'll keep getting appended to this file. But in my experience, having only one in here, that makes sense because this is a specific user's home directory. And only a specific user will be using some private key. All right, now I need to get my hands on this private key somehow to be able to put it on my client. So you can do that in any kind of way, right? Send it through an email, a message. What I'm going to do is switch on the SSH service. So I'll start my SSHD service, and that means I can now log into this machine. So I'm going to SSH into this machine. Then I'll put in my password. So password authentication is still enabled. If I do ls here, there's that private key that I want. So if I cat that, and I take the content, copy, and then on my host machine, which is kind of this one, so I'll just open up a new tab. I'm in my home directory. What I'll do is the same thing. So I'll echo this into, let's see here, Fedora key. I'll paste that in there. That should do it. Let's see what's the content of this thing. Okay. And now I don't want to be able to log in with a password. So I'm going to disconnect from this thing. And then back on my server, I need to update some stuff. So we have our public key set up. I'm going to edit some config file for SSHD. And this thing is found in etc or etc directory, SSH. And the file that I want to edit is going to be sshd_config. And here we go. The lines that I want are going to be these two. Now you might not have them already. I've been doing some stuff with this. But the first thing is going to be public key authentication, yes, and password authentication, no. Going to save this file. And then I need to restart SSHD. Okay, that thing's been restarted. Let's try and connect to this user. So it tells me permission denied, public key, all that stuff. Okay, that's fine. I have this Fedora key in here. Where is it? There it is. So what I'll do is I'll say SSH-I. This gives me the identity file flag. So I'll pass in this Fedora key. And then I'll try with my user. So it tells me, warning, unprotected private key file. These permissions are too open. Okay, that's fine. This is my file, right? So I can change stuff on there. So I'm going to change the mode on this file. And what I need is read-only access. So I'll pass in 0400 on my Fedora key. And now if I try this, it's going to ask me for that passphrase. See if I remember it. And there you go. I've successfully connected to my server, making use of a key pair. So no passwords or anything. The reason why you want to do this is so that you can be sure that connections are coming from a specific machine. So if this identity file is installed on a specific client, and you know that those connections are coming from a machine that belongs to or is in possession of somebody that you know. And because there's a passphrase on here, it's even more secure. The problem with a password is you can connect to this server from anywhere in the world, provided you have that password, and that might not also always be the most safe, right? This is all about security on your servers. So there we go. We've added in this private key and public key. So what are the important points here? Point number 1 is that SSHD is running. Point number 2 is to have these two values configured. And then point number 3 is to use this command here to generate a key pair. Change the permissions, so it's read only for the owning user. Append the public key to this SSH authorized keys on the server. And then get the private key somehow on the client machine that can be passed in as the identity file using this I flag. And that's kind of it. Here's some config changes that are required here. So I have public authentication, pub key authentication, yes, and password authentication, no. Just a note on how I did it here. So I generated my keys and then I logged in using my password in order to get the key. If I do this with another user, it's not going to work anymore because password authentication is now switched off. Another thing to note, whenever you make changes to this file, this SSHD config file, you need to restart SSHD for those changes to take effect. And that's kind of it.